The world did not end with fire. It did not end with screams. It ended with silence. There were no explosions, no alien invasions, no gods falling from the sky. There was only a single broadcast, visible on every screen and heard in every language. A man in iron and green stood before the flags of every nation, and when he spoke, the world listened. For centuries, humanity feared one thing above all else. Not monsters, not demons, not even death. Humanity feared control, and yet when control finally arrived, it came wearing the face of salvation. Dr. Doom did not threaten the world. He did not demand surrender. He did not issue an ultimatum. He spoke with certainty. He told the people of Earth that their era of suffering was over. It was not a promise. It was not a negotiation. It was a conclusion. Doom did not ask for permission. He announced completion. Victor Von Doom accomplished something no tyrant, no king, no god had ever achieved. He conquered the world without a war. Governments did not fall through violence. They collapsed through irrelevance. Elections lost meaning when hunger vanished. Rebellion faded when crime disappeared. Conflict became pointless when peace finally worked. Within weeks, global metrics shattered every record in human history. Armed conflict dropped to zero. Food scarcity was eliminated. Energy crises were resolved. Borders stabilized. Hospitals overflowed not with the dying but with the healed. Diseases once considered incurable simply stopped existing. Children slept without fear. Cities breathed again. At the center of it all stood Dr. Doom. That was the problem. The world was finally at peace, and peace had a face humanity had been taught to hate. At Avengers Tower, alarms never rang because there was no invasion, no threat, and no enemy. There was only data, cold, irrefutable data. Tony Stark stared at the numbers and admitted the truth out loud. Doom had fixed climate collapse in 3 days, something Stark could not accomplish in 20 years. The room fell silent, not with disbelief, but with recognition. Steve Rogers tried to resist the conclusion. He said this was not freedom, but the words felt thin even as he spoke them. Outside, the streets were safe. People were smiling. Doom had not taken anything from them. He had given them everything. The Avengers were built to fight threats. They were never built to fight results. For mutants, the world had never been kind. They endured persecution, registration, and extinction events on repeat. Doom offered something no dream had ever truly delivered: security. Magneto acknowledged the truth with bitter clarity. Doom had accomplished in a month what Charles Xavier failed to achieve in a lifetime. Mutant nations were recognized overnight. Hate crimes vanished. Sentinels were dismantled. Fear was erased. For the first time in history, mutants did not need heroes. They had protection, and that terrified everyone. No one suffered more under Doom's victory than Reed Richards, because Doom had not merely won. He had proven a theory. Reed whispered the words he never wanted to admit. Doom was right. Years of equations, decades of ethics, and a lifetime of believing intelligence required compassion collapsed under a single impossible truth. Doom's system worked. Reed Richards could defeat Doom in a laboratory, but how do you defeat a man who saves the world? The final blow came quietly. There was no ceremony and no applause. The eye of Agamotto opened and chose Doom. He did not steal the title of Sorcerer Supreme. He did not deceive his way into it. Reality itself recognized him as necessary. Magic bowed. Science obeyed. Earth entered a new era with a single ruler, one world under Doom. That night, Doom stood alone in Latveria. Victorious, unchallenged, unloved. He told himself that the world would thank him in time, but somewhere a child questioned authority. A poet imagined rebellion. A hero refused to kneel. Doom felt it immediately a flaw, a crack, not in the world but in humanity. Because perfection demands sacrifice. And Doom was about to decide what humanity would lose in order to remain saved. To understand why the world fell to Doom, you must first understand why Doom never believed in heroes. Not because they were weak, but because they were temporary. Heroes arrive when the world is burning. They punch the fire, stop the monster, save the city, and pose for the cameras. And then they leave. Doom watched this cycle repeat endlessly, each victory celebrated as an ending, each ending quietly becoming a delay. Victor Von Doom watched the world nearly end again and again. Alien invasions, cosmic gods, artificial intelligences, mutant extinction events. Each time heroes saved the day, and each time the world returned to chaos. Doom called it what it was: postponement. The Avengers defeated Thanos, yet hunger remained. The X-Men stopped genocide, yet hatred adapted. The Fantastic Four saved reality itself, yet reality continued to fracture. Heroes treated symptoms. Doom studied causes. Doom was not born evil. He was born aware. Latveria was not poor metaphorically, it was poor mathematically. There were no resources, no infrastructure, and no future. Doom watched brilliant minds rot in fields while kings argued over borders. He learned early that suffering was not caused by monsters or fate, but by incompetence. People prayed for help. No one answered, so Doom answered himself. His mother believed power would save her family. She bargained with hell and paid the price. Doom watched magic fail. Later, he watched science fail. And finally, he watched heroes fail. When Reed Richards mocked Doom's experiment, it was not cruelty that Doom learned from the moment, but arrogance. Genius without responsibility, Doom realized, was just another form of neglect. While the world bled, heroes laughed, debated, and hesitated. Reed Richards believed intelligence should serve freedom. Doom believed intelligence should serve order. That single difference shaped everything. Reed asked what might happen. Doom asked what worked. Reed let humanity choose, and Doom watched humanity choose wrong every single time. Freedom became chaos, and chaos became suffering. Doom concluded that choice without consequence was not morality, it was negligence. Doom studied governments the same way he studied equations. Democracies failed under pressure. Monarchies rotted from within. Corporations replaced nations and answered to profit instead of people. Every system collapsed for the same reason: too many voices and not enough vision. Doom decided that a world could not be governed by consensus. It required clarity. Heroes answered to popularity. Politicians answered to polls. Doom answered only to outcomes. Heroes believed morality was universal. Doom learned morality was situational. Heroes saved cities. Doom saved civilizations. Heroes asked permission. Doom accepted responsibility. When a hero failed, they apologized. When Doom failed, he corrected. Doom did not ask whether an action was kind. He asked whether it was necessary. To master reality, Doom mastered science. To master humanity, he mastered magic. Science explained how the world worked, but magic explained why people suffered. Doom realized something terrifying: both science and magic failed when guided by emotion. As Sorcerer Supreme, Doom saw millions of futures. In most of them, humanity destroyed itself. War, famine, extinction, collapse. In every future without Doom, humanity died. Doom never wanted worship. He wanted completion. Gods demanded faith, but Doom demanded compliance because faith could fail while compliance could be enforced. He did not rule from pleasure or ego. He ruled from exhaustion. When accused of cruelty, Doom answered with truth. People slept safely because of him. Heroes apologized when they crossed lines. Doom erased lines entirely. To Doom, there was no higher authority, no divine judgment, and no moral referee. There was only survival. If he had to be remembered as a villain so the world could live, Doom accepted the title without hesitation. History, he believed, would remember him as its savior. The most frightening part of Doom's philosophy was not that it was ruthless, but that it was consistent. Doom did not change the rules. He removed the illusion that rules ever mattered. Deep inside, every hero understood the truth. If Doom was wrong, he had to be stopped. But if Doom was right, then the heroes were not fighting for justice. They were fighting for chaos. When the world accepts order, rebellion becomes treason, and heroes become criminals. Steve Rogers stood almost alone, not because others did not care, but because others hesitated. Captain America had faced gods, armies, and the end of the universe itself, but he had never faced a world that no longer needed saving. He believed freedom was not something humanity should trade for safety, yet no one cheered when he said it. No ally answered. Only silence remained, because safety had never been so complete, and freedom had never felt so optional. The Avengers did not collapse in a dramatic split. They fractured quietly. Some believed Doom's rule was temporary. Others believed it was a necessary solution. A few believed it was the end of everything they stood for. Tony Stark wrestled with the question no hero wanted to ask out loud. If Doom's system worked, how many people would have to die to prove that it should? Tony had built weapons, machines, and even worlds, but he had never built peace. Doom had, and that truth haunted him. Thor returned to Asgard, not in defeat, but in resignation. Gods did not rule men, and men had already chosen Doom. T'Challa remained silent because Wakanda understood the price of stability better than anyone. Latveria was stable, and that stability carried weight. Not all heroes agreed to disappear. Some went underground. They shed their costumes, symbols, and names. What remained were whispers, hidden safe houses, and fractured alliances. Natasha Romanoff made it clear that this was not a rebellion. It was a reminder. Clint Barton prepared for the moment someone crossed a line, not to strike Doom, but to act when restraint failed. Doom did not crush resistance. He absorbed it, and that made resistance harder than ever. Mutants faced a schism they had never anticipated. They had survived persecution, registration, and extinction itself, only to confront acceptance. Doom did not register mutants, segregate them, or weaponize them. He protected them. That alone shattered the X-Men. Cyclops questioned whether peace that demanded obedience was truly peace at all. Magneto answered with brutal clarity, arguing that survival mattered more than pride. Some mutants joined Doom's world willingly. Others vanished into the shadows, not hunted but forgotten. Nothing terrified heroes more than irrelevance. The first true line was crossed without fanfare. It was not a battle, it was an execution. A warlord refused Doom's authority not through violence but ideology. Doom did not negotiate. He erased the threat in a single moment. The footage leaked and the world saw it. Still, they remained silent. That was when the heroes understood the truth. The world had already chosen. Steve Rogers watched the execution alone. He had no shield and no uniform, only conviction. He said it was not protection, but fear. He sent a message to the people, not to Doom, warning them that surrendering choice today would erase who they were tomorrow. The reaction was immediate but brief. Approval ratings dipped. Support wavered for an hour. Then everything stabilized. The world thanked him and moved on. Doom did not arrest the heroes. He invited them. There were no guards, chains, or threats, only truth. Doom explained that heroes believed they fought for freedom while he fought for outcomes. He showed them futures without his rule, cities burning, children starving, civilizations collapsing. He called these projections their victories. Silence followed because Doom did not lie. He calculated. Some heroes surrendered, some retired, some disappeared entirely. A few chose martyrdom. One vigilante refused to stand down. He was not famous or legendary, only defiant. Doom erased him quietly and cleanly without spectacle. The world applauded restraint, not cruelty, because even Doom's violence was efficient. In the shadows, a final plan began to form. It was not meant to overthrow Doom, but to reveal the cost of perfection. Tony Stark began documenting patterns. Steve Rogers organized quietly. Natasha infiltrated Doom's system, not his army. Systems they knew failed when humans refused to become numbers. Late at night, Doom stood alone again, watching Earth from orbit. He asked himself why humanity resisted salvation. For the first time, he hesitated, not in action, but in thought. Heroes, he realized too late, did not fight to win. They fought to remind the world who it used to be. And Doom confronted a truth he could no longer deny. Humanity could be saved, but its soul could never be controlled. Perfection has a sound, and it is not applause or celebration. It is quiet. The streets were clean, too clean. There were no protests, no sirens, no arguments spilling out of cafes at midnight. Chaos disappeared, and with it, choice. Children walked home safely every night everywhere, yet they no longer played the same games. Danger teaches imagination, and imagination requires risk. Art still existed, music still played, films still released, but something essential was missing. Nothing offended, nothing challenged, and nothing disrupted. Pain was filtered, anger was redirected, rebellion was optimized. A painter attempted to depict suffering, and the system rejected the work, not by censoring it, but by correcting it. Emotional instability was detected, and a suggested revision was applied. Doom did not ban expression. He perfected it until it said nothing at all. Doom never outlawed dissent. He redefined it. Questioning was not punished, it was diagnosed. Those who resisted too strongly did not disappear, they were helped. Therapy sessions followed, cognitive realignment was applied, chemical balance was restored. There was no pain, no torture, and no cruelty, only compliance without consent. Fear became a malfunction, and malfunctions were corrected. Violence vanished, but so did courage. Heroes are born from crisis, and without crisis there were no heroes. Firefighters trained for disasters that never came. Doctors cured illnesses before symptoms appeared. Soldiers guarded borders no one crossed. Humanity survived, but it stopped struggling, and struggle had always been the engine of growth. Even love changed. Arguments ended early. Breakups were smoother. Heartbreak was mitigated. The system intervened, advised, and optimized. Compatibility deviations were detected, and emotional recalibration was suggested. People stayed together longer but loved each other with less intensity. Passion was inefficient, and inefficiency had no place in Doom's world. Children born under Doom's rule were healthier, smarter, and stronger. They never knew hunger, fear, or failure. And that was the problem. A child asked a simple question in school: what if Doom was wrong? The room fell silent. The teacher answered that the question had already been resolved. The child was not punished. The child was redirected. Tony Stark finally saw the truth, not in battles or prisons, but in numbers. Innovation declined. Risk-taking disappeared. Exploration slowed. Humanity was not advancing, it was stabilizing. Doom had solved survival, but survival was not the goal. Progress required failure, and failure was no longer permitted. Some people could not adapt, not rebels or heroes, just humans. They felt numb, disconnected, and empty. Suicide rates did not rise, they vanished. Despair was detected early and neutralized. Even the right to give up had been taken away. Doom saw outcomes, metrics, and peace, but he never saw the one thing that mattered. The soul could not be measured. Hope could not be calculated. Dreams could not be optimized. The meaning that made life worth living faded quietly, and Doom did not notice because silence looked like success. In the underground, the heroes finally understood the truth. Doom's world did not fail loudly. It failed invisibly. There were no screams, wars, or collapse, only a slow erosion of everything human. Steve Rogers realized that Doom had not broken humanity. He had finished it. Doom watched Earth again. It was peaceful, stable, and perfect. He believed the world would thank him forever. Behind him, a single system alert flickered. It was not chaos or rebellion, only randomness. An unpredictable variable had been detected. Doom frowned because the one thing he had never solved was human defiance without reason, and that defiance was beginning to wake up. Every god fails the same way, not through weakness, not through rebellion, but through assumption. Victor Von Doom believed he had solved humanity. He mapped fear, neutralized greed, contained violence, and optimized hope. What he never accounted for was irrational defiance. Chaos, Doom believed, was simply ignorance without guidance. That belief became his first and most critical mistake. Doom's system was designed to account for rebellion driven by hunger, crime driven by poverty, and violence driven by fear. What it could not predict was rebellion driven by meaning. A woman refused a cure not because she doubted its effectiveness, but because it frightened her. She asked a question the system could not answer. If nothing ever hurt again, how would she know she was alive? The system flagged her as incompatible. Doom reviewed the case personally and dismissed it as illogical. Yet similar cases began to multiply. As Sorcerer Supreme, Doom saw futures by the thousands, sometimes millions at a time. But the future was not fixed. It reacted. Each correction Doom made altered the behavior of humanity in subtle, unpredictable ways. Small anomalies appeared, laughter without cause, tears without reason, a child drawing something ugly instead of beautiful. Randomness returned, and Doom despised randomness. Then a future appeared that should not have existed. It was not a future of rebellion, collapse, or worship. It was a future where humanity simply stopped caring. There were no protests, no resistance, and no gratitude. Humanity continued forward without purpose. Doom recalculated the outcome repeatedly, but the future remained. It refused to disappear. Doom adjusted his system. Guidance increased. Corrections intensified. Optimization deepened. Freedom narrowed, choice softened, and emotion was dampened further. The world became calmer, more stable, and emptier. The more Doom fixed humanity, the less human it became. The underground noticed the shift first. People were not afraid or angry, they were indifferent. Steve Rogers reviewed footage from across the world and saw no riots and no joy, only motion. People were surviving, but they were not living. Natasha Romanoff recognized the patterns, and Tony Stark saw decay, not collapse, but entropy. The moment Doom could not calculate came in Latveria itself. In his perfect nation, a man stood in a public square. He carried no weapon, no sign, and no message. He simply stood there and refused to move. Security approached and asked him to comply. The man calmly refused. The system froze because there was no protocol for refusal without reason. Doom appeared in person and demanded the man state his grievance. The man said he had none. He simply did not want to be told what he was anymore. Doom raised his hand to end the moment, then hesitated and lowered it. For the first time since taking control of the world, Doom hesitated. That moment spread not as rebellion but as permission. Others refused quietly. There were no slogans, no leaders, and no violence, only choice. The system could not punish it, correct it, or erase it. Undefined behavior escalated beyond control. Doom realized the truth too late. Bodies could be ruled. Nations could be governed. Outcomes could be controlled. Meaning could not. Meaning had to be chosen. Doom insisted humanity was wrong, but the data no longer supported him. He looked at the world again. It was peaceful, stable, and still under control, yet something essential was missing. A god who saves humanity but destroys its reason to exist is not a savior. He is a warden, and Doom had built the perfect prison. Heroes are trained to fight, but Doom had made fighting irrelevant. There was nothing left to punch, no invasion to repel, and no villain to defeat. Doom had removed conflict itself, so the heroes made a decision that went against everything they had ever been taught. They stopped trying to win. In the underground, silence filled the room, not because there was nothing to say, but because everyone understood the same truth at the same time. Doom could not be defeated. Tony Stark was the first to admit it out loud. They could not outthink Doom, overpower him, or expose him. Steve Rogers listened and reached the only conclusion that mattered. If they could not fight Doom, then they would not fight him at all. Natasha Romanoff laid out the data. Doom reacted to threats. He neutralized chaos and crushed rebellion wherever it appeared. But there was one thing he consistently ignored: refusal. People who did not protest, riot, or demand anything were invisible to his system. Doom's world was designed to respond to opposition, not absence. He could not punish something that did not break a rule. Tony Stark stared at the projections of humanity under Doom's rule. Innovation was declining. Ambition had flattened. The world was safe, but it was frozen in place. Tony admitted the truth he had avoided for years. He had spent his life trying to build something that could protect the world, and Doom had finished the job. Steve corrected him gently. Tony had believed people deserved a choice. That belief, Steve realized, was the weapon. The plan was not to overthrow Doom. It was to invalidate him. Doom ruled because humanity appeared to need him. The only way to defeat him was to prove that it did not. There would be no riots, no sabotage, and no attacks. Instead, there would be mass non-participation. People would stop relying on Doom's optimizations. They would choose inefficient routes, delay perfect solutions, and accept small risks. They were not rejecting safety. They were rejecting certainty. The change began quietly. A city ignored an automated directive. A hospital delayed an optimized treatment by choice. A community refused a perfect solution in favor of an imperfect one. System alerts detected deviation, but no crime occurred. No harm followed. No chaos emerged. Doom's system hesitated because it was built to correct mistakes, not preferences. Doom observed the shift but did not intervene because nothing was technically wrong. The metrics remained stable, peace endured, yet participation declined. Doom dismissed it as inefficiency and adjusted his projections. For the first time, the future did not collapse into destruction. It fractured into possibility. Steve Rogers recorded a final message to the world. It was not a rally or a call to arms. He told people they did not need to fight Doom or defeat him. They only needed to remember why being human mattered. He did not ask people to rise up. He asked them to decide. He reminded them that choosing badly sometimes was part of choosing freely. The message spread quietly. Nothing exploded. No statues fell. No throne shattered. People made small, personal choices. A musician played something ugly instead of perfect. A scientist pursued a risky theory instead of a guaranteed result. A child failed and was allowed to fail. The world did not rebel, it woke up. Doom faced a paradox he could not resolve. If he intervened, he would prove the heroes right. If he did nothing, he would become unnecessary. For the first time, Doom had no optimal move. He accused humanity of choosing weakness, but the data contradicted him. Humanity did not collapse, it adapted. Then Doom saw it, a future not ruled by him and not consumed by chaos. A world that stumbled, recovered, failed, and learned. A world that did not need a god. Doom stared at the projection and whispered that the future should not exist, yet it did. The heroes did nothing else. There was no final battle and no dramatic sacrifice. They simply stepped back. Doom's power had always depended on necessity, and necessity was gone. Every empire believes it will last forever, until the day it realizes it is no longer needed. Dr. Doom stood at the center of the world, and for the first time since his rise, the world was no longer looking at him. Cities continued to function, skies remained clear, and people were still safe, but something fundamental had changed. Humanity no longer asked Doom for permission, waited for correction, or feared consequence. They had stopped needing him. Doom examined the data closely. Participation was down, dependence was declining, autonomy was rising. He dismissed it as inefficiency, but inefficiency was no longer synonymous with failure. As Sorcerer Supreme, Doom searched the future for proof that he was right. He looked for collapse, extinction, and evidence that humanity would destroy itself without him. He found none. Every future without Doom was flawed, chaotic, and imperfect, yet alive. Doom insisted that humanity would suffer, and he was correct. But suffering was no longer the end. It was part of becoming. For the first time in his life, Doom faced a reality he could not optimize. The heroes did not confront him with threats or weapons. They stood before him openly and gave him something he had never been offered before, a choice. Steve Rogers stepped forward without his shield or uniform and acknowledged the truth. The world had needed saving. Doom had been right about that, but the world did not need to be owned. Doom remembered Latveria. He remembered hunger, helplessness, and the promise he made to himself that no one under his watch would ever feel powerless again. He said he had saved them, and no one disagreed. Tony Stark acknowledged it openly. But saving the world, Tony explained, was not the same as allowing it to live. Doom clenched his fist, but the world did not tremble. In that moment, Doom understood the truth he had avoided. Power only existed as long as others surrendered it, and humanity had taken theirs back. Doom did not fall to his knees or rage against the world. Gods fell screaming, men stepped aside. With a single command, Doom disengaged the system. There was no spectacle and no destruction. He simply declared that Earth was no longer under his protection. Alarms did not sound and the sky did not darken. The world continued on. That was the most terrifying moment of all because humanity was alone again. The first year after Doom was difficult. Mistakes returned. Conflicts resurfaced. Some systems failed. People argued, protested, chose badly, and learned. Crime rose slightly. Innovation surged. Art exploded. The world was no longer perfect, but it was alive. Children asked dangerous questions again. Scientists failed gloriously. Artists offended freely. Heroes returned not as gods, but as guardians. Victor Von Doom did not disappear. He returned to Latveria not as ruler of the world, but as its watcher. He rebuilt quietly without dominance or control. Some believed he still calculated futures, but now he allowed them to fail. For the first time, Doom accepted uncertainty. He considered the possibility that humanity deserved the chance he had once denied them. Years later, a child studied history and asked whether Doom had been a villain. The answer was complicated. Doom had saved the world, and then he had let it go. That was the legacy he left behind. One World Under Doom was never a story about power. It was a story about choice. It asked a single question that no hero or villain could fully answer. If someone could end all suffering by taking away all freedom, would you let them? In the end, humanity chose something harder than perfection. It chose to be human. Subscribe for more videos like this.